What's up everyone, Trent here, welcome to the Fandom Zone, and today we have a big boy to review for you, the Swamp Thing Maquette from Sideshow Collectibles. This boy stands at 24 inches tall, looks like he's coming straight out of the swamp to haunt your nightmares and protect the green. Now, I love this figure so much. It was on my release radar when it came out. I saw it in person at a convention and I loved it. I know there's been a lot of kind of animosity because of what it's made of. It's vinyl instead of polyresin, but when you're looking up close, this really does work to such a good advantage. The base itself is polyresin. That's where the weight is. It's really heavy, sculpted to perfection. And then we have the body. The body is fully made out of vinyl, except for the little tendrils that are coming off. The tendrils are PVC. So it's very light body. The weight is in the base, but it is extremely sturdy. It wobbles a little bit, but not too much. You don't have to worry about it being damaged or falling. And the tendrils being PVC, if you bump them accidentally, as opposed to them being more breakable and, while sturdy, but polyresin tends to have the ability to break if something knocks it, this will give way and allow that little bit of bend. This arrives in a huge box. And I mean, it is a big boy. It's got Swamp Thing coming out of this green, eerie mist all around the box. The mist is going, and on the back, it's got Swamp Thing. It's a big box. And when you pull Swamp Thing out of the box, it's in two pieces. It's simply in the base, and Swampy comes as an actual whole figure, which makes it even cooler. A lot of the maquettes and premium formats from Sideshow have multiple pieces. No, this is one big badass figure. So I got the collector's edition of this statue, which has a unit size of 500. The exclusive edition has 250, but I got number 39 out of 500, so I'm super happy. I love it when I get a low number. And as you can see, it's got this really awesome Swamp Thing logo coming out with green ripples, emulating how he would be moving through the swamp. And the base itself is awesome. It comes with wildlife that you would see in the swamp. They always look really angry as well. You've got the little snappy turtle down the front, which is pulling a weird face. A snake, I'm not sure what snake, I'm just going to say it's a boa of some kind. You've got dilapidated, rotting trees, kind of emulating what the rot would be if the rot is actually attacking the green. And the base itself is surrounded by roots and earthy tones. But the really cool feature that the pictures don't really do justice on the website is the actual water. The muddy type of water, it's clear and it's emulating him walking through the actual swamp itself. It's a really cool feature that a lot of the photos don't do justice. And on the base, there are two insertion points for his feet. One has a keying section and the other one slots in, and they both rest. And as you can see, it goes in. He kind of has to lean forward a little bit to lock in, but he locks in nice and he's very sturdy. And the coloring of this statue is really well done. Lots of earthy tones, greens, browns, different darker shades of green and brown. It is quite simple in terms of the actual paints used, but it looks quite complex because of the detail on the actual statue itself. Now, the sculpt for this piece was done by Paul Komoda, and it's an homage to the art by Stephen Bissette and John Totalman, who drew Swamp Thing in Alan Moore's prestigious and iconic Swamp Thing run in Saga of the Swamp Thing, which is Volume 2. Now, Swampy debuted in House of Secrets 92 as Alex Olsen initially, and created by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, one of the best horror artists of all time. And he then got adapted into a solo series in Swamp Thing, and in issue 1, we are introduced to Alec Holland, who is the star of the main series, transforms into Swamp Thing after he is creating a biorestorative formula with his wife. Some nasty people come along and they basically blow up the lab. He catches on fire, runs into the swamp, and emerges as the Swamp Thing. But it's not until Alan Moore comes on that we get a new interpretation of Swamp Thing based on this particular issue here, which is the anatomy lesson issue, where we learn where Fluoric Man is actually dissecting Swamp Thing in General Sunderland's lab, that he is not actually Alec Holland. It's merely him believing he is. He's actually a vegetative monster who has adapted human tendencies. And the big difference between this type of version of Swamp Thing and, say, the earlier versions done by Wrightson and Wein and later versions, particularly the New 52 and Scott Snyder's run, is that this is much more monstrous than the humanoid figure that we see, which is what the sculptor intended. He wanted him to be that creature from the Black Lagoon kind of thing, that really eerie monster. So we get this vibe, and it's really awesome. You get to see his red eyes. If the light is good, I've tried this with different lighting techniques already. It works really well on different angles. Depending on what type of lighting you want to have, it emulates in different parts of the figure, highlights different greens. It can work really, really well. The paint job in this holds the light really well, and once again, with the angle, you get to see all the detail that's coming through this figure that you may not have seen before. The highlights on the spikes and the vines, whether it be brown or whether they just be the tips on the legs here, the tips of the actual spikes are green. He's got kind of a Batman pointy thing going on there. But it's really interesting to see how this figure looks. And the more you look at it, the paints, they aren't clean. They are kind of muddy sometimes, splotchy at points, and very dense, but it works for the monstrosity of this figure, I feel. I know there's been a lot of apprehension about this figure at points, and people have been kind of not wanting to get it because of this, but it works so well, and in different lights, I recommend testing it out in different lights, definitely. Now, the exclusive edition comes with Cranius, who's part of the Unmen. He's introduced in the first volume of Swamp Thing. He cameos in issue 1 and debuts in issue 2. He's created by Anton Arcane, who is one of Swamp Thing's arch nemesis, and he's basically a brain living on a hand, and he's able to, move by. He's kind of like the Thing from Addams Family, except he's got a brain head on his hand. So yeah, he's this monster. He's the exclusive. He looks really cool. I just didn't want the exclusive because I'm not really a big fan of the separate pieces. I'd rather him to be kind of exclusive and be built into the statue somehow, whether it be an alternate portrait. So I just decided not going to grab him for this. Another thing I really enjoy about this statue are the growths that are coming out of his back. This is a reference to the comic books where Swamp Thing in issue 22, A Saga of the Swamp Thing, Alan Moore again, he has learnt that he's not a human and he's basically a plant monster. He doesn't know what to do with himself. His whole world's been turned upside down. In the comics, he goes into hibernation in the swamp and he starts secreting these plant-like things called tubers. These are sweet potatoes / yams that have hallucinogenic qualities. So he starts producing them. Floronic Man tells us that that's what they are, and they play a significant role moving forward in the comic books. He gets Abigail Arcane to eat some to maintain sustenance, so she lives in the swamp later on. But yeah, it's a nice little homage and touch to a key feature from the comic books from Alan Moore's run, which is just absolutely iconic. And yeah, it's a nice little feature. Overall, this is a fantastic piece. I love it. It stands out big time. Even though it's dark, the green really makes it pop, and the oversized nature and imposing figure that Swamp Thing is, it is a statue to behold. And I strongly recommend, if you were thinking of biting the bullet and getting it, bite the bullet and get it. I have not regretted it. The base itself is subtle in the way it's colored. I do feel there could be a little bit more color in the base, especially around the back, but it is just highlighting the roots and the browns. But yeah, that's probably my only major issue with the piece, along with where the PVC joins. The paint kind of outlines where the joint is. If it's not combined properly, you can really see the attachments for those PVCs. But that's a minor gripe. I got this for a significant discount to what it is. It was retailing for $1,100 in Australia. And yeah, so I got a significant discount on it, and I just had to pick it up. But yeah, tell me your thoughts on the Swamp Thing maquette. Are you a fan of it? I can tell you now, I love it. But yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel, leave comments, give the video a thumbs up, and yeah, as always, keep it nerdy.